Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eyeonafrica with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, meet for the grinder. A former Ukrainian minister is amongst those sharing an online video that appears to show an African recruit into the Russian army with a mine strapped to his chest. He warns the continent, the Ukrainian minister warns the continent off from getting too close to the Kremlin, claiming African nations are treated like cannon fodder. But we take a closer look at the credibility of videos like this. Also, polls close in Uganda's 10th presidential election. Our team on the ground witnesses a security force clash with crowds around one polling station as voters refuse orders to leave. And there's no stop to the AFCON thrills as football fans around the world gear up for this weekend's Morocco men's final in a showdown between Senegal and hosts Morocco. We take a look at the wind-up for the women's tournament. But first, claims that African men recruited into the Russian army are being systematically abused are being fueled by online videos appearing to show black men in Russian fatigues being dehumanized, humiliated, referred to as meat for the grinder in the Kremlin's war with Ukraine. Now, one particularly disturbing video doing the rounds, shared on X by a former Ukrainian minister, appears to show an African fighter with a mine strapped to his chest before being pushed towards what's described as being a Ukrainian assault. Now, since Russia's 2022 invasion of Ukraine, there have also been wider concerns about Africans allegedly being tricked into joining the Russian military.
Somebody phoned me on the street and said there are some jobs in Russia, jobs to work in the supermarket, jobs to work in the factory, and they are waiting good paying jobs. Then I said, okay. Reaching there, we saw the gate opening automatically. And they said, you have entered here, but sorry guys, you are joining Russian what? Military. Then we told them that, no, this is not what brought us here. They said, there's nothing we can do. You can't cross the gate. The gate is locked. He said, you have to sign.
Now, videos like these are difficult to verify. There may be reasons that they're being shared. Often they come from Ukrainian sources. Nevertheless, they have a huge impact in shaping narratives about the African continent's relationship with Russia. Now, for a closer look at the significance of this, I'm joined now by Thierry Verculon, who's a researcher specializing in Russia's recruitment policy in Africa. Thierry, thanks so much for making the time to speak to me. Now, some of the videos I referred to earlier are really harrying. In your opinion, do they hold water? And how hard is it to establish credibility? What's your process to do so?
Yeah, good evening. We published recently a study at the French Institute for International Affairs, and we have collected testimonies from African fighters who are with the Russian army presently. And they indeed confirm that they are very often badly treated by their Russian officers, and that they are sent to the most dangerous mission. Sometimes they even suicide missions to detect Ukrainian position and stuff like that. So the video that is now on the social networks and that you just showed is actually seems to be quite credible, and actually it confirms what we've heard. It also confirms the fact that
you're talking about the gentleman with the mine strapped to his chest.
Yes, and other videos also that have appeared on social media. And also we have to remember that even Russian citizens are very badly treated in the Russian army, and that there has been instances of murder of Russian soldiers by their officers. So this is not very surprising.
So why do Africans want to sign up to fight for the Russians anyway? And do you think videos like this are changing that much at any level?
Well, I mean, the most of the people that are mercenaries for the from Africa for the Russian army have actually been trapped, as it was said in the videos you showed, because they were promised jobs in civilian sectors. And when they arrived in Russia, they were forced to sign contracts to join the Russian army. Even, for instance, African students who were in Russia, living in Russia at the start of the war, they also been forced to join the Russian military. And the first actually African fighters who was killed on the front line in September 2022 was a Zambian student who was forced to join the Wagner group. So this is, of course, people do that for economic reason, and because they are migrants, want to find a job in the developed countries, and therefore they saw those jobs for Russia, and they are trapped in this kind of situation.
And as I mentioned earlier, this is your field of expertise. You're a researcher into the Russian military's approach to recruiting Africans. So what else, more broadly, have you learned about the Kremlin's strategy on that front?
Well, firstly, it's a global strategy. It's a global recruitment strategy. It's not only about Africa. They also recruit in the Middle East. They recruit in Asia. They even recruit in South America. Sorry. And there is actually quite a significant numbers of Cubans actually in the Russian army. So first, it's a global strategy. Secondly, it tells that the Russian army needs a cheap workforce. Because actually, according to NATO, since the start of the war, about 1.1 million Russian militaries have been killed in that war. That means the Russian army needs to recruit more and more, and to do so, they have raised quite a lot the wage of Russian militaries, and therefore recruiting foreigners is a way to get cheap soldiers actually, and that's I think the most important for the Russian authorities.
Thank you.
To get cheap fighter.
Thank you so much for breaking that down for us. Thierry Verculon there, an associate researcher specializing in the Russian military's recruitment strategy. Now, we turn to Uganda now, where there were widespread delays for its presidential election on Thursday. The run-up to the vote has been a turbulent one. President Yoweri Museveni, in power since 1986, is bidding for another term. And rights activists from across the continent have been expressing concerns about the potential for a crackdown on the opposition ahead of the election. Now, a telecoms blackout was imposed earlier this week, and our correspondent in Kampala witnessed skirmishes at voting points as police cracked down on onlookers. Our team sent us the following report.
It's barely 7 a.m. and already many Ugandans are flocking to polling stations.
It's really, really important because when you vote, it means that you're trying to put your voice out there on the kind of leader that you want to take on the next 5 years.
Voters, however, must be patient.
Unfortunately, we've not yet received some materials, but by God's grace, we are going to receive them and we begin working on our voters.
Delays in the delivery of materials and technical problems mean that voting gets underway 2 hours late in many areas, including the Wakiso district.
We are done, some of us we are done, but people are still in the lines, they are still voting. Yeah, I plead for all people who are still in their homes to come and vote. Yes, it's time for change.
This is also where Bobi Wine votes. He is the main challenger to President Yoweri Museveni, in power since 1986. Wine is popular with young Ugandans eager for change. Wine still says he won in 2021 and that the vote was stolen. He's encouraging his supporters to protest if they suspect electoral fraud this time around.
We've been telling the people of Uganda that this election is not about me as a candidate. It is about their right and defending their vote. So should the Electoral Commission subvert their voice, they have every right, as per Article 29 of our Constitution, to protest unarmed and non-violently.
As voting ends in the Kampala neighborhood of Kiamwokia, residents ignore authorities' orders to leave. Many stay put to keep an eye on the ballot count.
We need to know how our opponents that we have voted for, how they have performed, before they give us the results we are not sure of.
Not far away, tensions flare with the police. In the run-up to the election, rights activists and opposition figures had warned of violence and intimidation. As voting came to an end, our team witnessed it firsthand. The army ordered us to stop filming. Our crew was cocked up in unrest as Ugandan civilians were forcefully dispersed by security forces. A glimpse of the risks faced by some voters amidst Uganda's volatile political climate.
Well, while excitement is building ahead of the Africa Cup of Nations final in Morocco this Sunday, the home team is already getting ready to host its next big tournament. The Women's Africa Cup of Nations will be kicking off in the country on the 17th, and the official draw took place in the capital on Thursday. Our team followed the ceremony for us.
We now know who will be facing who at the Women's Africa Cup of Nations in 2026 after the draw here in Morocco. Back in 1998, in the first edition of the tournament, just 8 teams took part. That's now been doubled to 16 teams for the first time ever, while CAF President Patrice Motsepe announced more investment in the women's game.
And the plan as well is down the line to increase that even more. And we need investment. We should continue to invest. We will get the results because there's a huge commitment to invest.
It's so incredible, to have 16 teams, something that we've dreamt of from a very young age, seeing what the men do and how many they are in their groups. We look at ourselves and we're like, when are we going to get there? And slowly but surely we are getting there.
In Group A, host Morocco are up against Kenya, Senegal and Algeria. In Group B, Tanzania, Burkina Faso, Ivory Coast and South Africa will be going head-to-head. In Group C, the defending champions Nigeria up against Malawi, Egypt and Zambia. And finally, in Group D, Cape Verde, Mali, Cameroon and Ghana will be going head-to-head. It's the third time in a row that Morocco will be hosting the tournament, and they're hoping that this time round will be a third time lucky after losing out against Nigeria in the final last time round.
I think we will have the best competition in Africa in women's football, and I hope all the best for all the teams.
The tournament will be kicking off here in Morocco on the 17th of March with the big final on the 3rd of April. That's not all that's up for grabs. A World Cup qualification is at stake, with all of the semi-finalists securing automatic qualification.
Selena, they're not letting anything get by her, following all of the football developments in Morocco. That is, though, all we have time for Eye on Africa. Thanks very much for joining us. Do so again if you can. Till then, take care.